All right, we are back from spring break with the lovely and talented Anna Navarro. Hello, Anna.
Hello, Brian.
So we were just discussing off camera, you were bitten by something in Costa Rica that may or may not be infectious. I'm trying to figure out if you could be now vampiric in some way, but tell me.
And like I said to you, I hope I'm a vampire because there's a lot of people whose blood I'd like to drain.
Yes, you still have some color. You haven't gone pale yet, so that's good. How was your vacation besides the biting?
It was lovely. I really wanted to try to disconnect because, as I've talked about on this podcast many times, I really feel we need to find a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, it's about being engaged, leaning in, speaking out, denouncing the abuses, which means being aware of them, but also sometimes leaning out and connecting with yourself and with, your husband.
Loved ones, yeah.
And spending time on your mental health and doing different things. So I went to Costa Rica, this area that actually used to belong to Nicaragua. It's called Guanacaste. It's a peninsula on the Pacific Ocean. And I did the things that I don't usually do. I hiked, almost died, played a lot of pickleball, sailed, swam in the ocean every single day. For me, the ocean is like my happy place. It's therapeutic. Watched sunsets, drank a lot of margaritas. I mean, it was, and the house that I was in had Hulu and Netflix and all, but it didn't have live TV. It didn't have live news. So I didn't watch news.
Oh, this is a whole new world for you.
8 days. Well, I got all the bad news from going on social media and reading the New York Times,
Sure.
which I do I do every day. And if I felt like it was like a barrage of caca happening that whole week, right? Because it was the week when the Supreme Court told the Trump administration they had to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia from El Salvador, and the Trump administration basically said, "Really? You and what army is going to make us?" They defied it. It was the week when Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, where this man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, is from, went down to El Salvador, where they planted margaritas in front of them. I was thinking to myself, I would have fallen for that plant.
Yeah, you totally would have. That's like Anna bait.
But you know what? Those margaritas, so people
good?
Understand what we're talking about.
If we have a picture of it, we'll throw it up
what
on the
Van
YouTube.
Hollen is saying is that first they want the El Salvadorians, the El Salvadorian government, which is obviously in cahoots with Trump and his administration, wanted them to meet by the pool, which they refused. They met inside, four walls. And then they ordered water, and people came and put these 2 margarita glasses in front of them because they wanted to, for the optics, they wanted the narrative that here was Kilmar Abrego Garcia and Van Hollen drinking margaritas by the pool. In fact, they didn't touch the margaritas. Also, upon close inspection, I want to say those are the most suspicious looking margaritas I ever saw. They're in the wrong glass, very pale. Mm-hmm. Like there was no lemon in that thing. Also,
was the rim treated in any way?
The rim was sugar. You do not treat a margarita glass with sugar. And there was a cherry. You do not put a cherry in a margarita.
Now, I hate to call her out. My wife enjoys a sugar rim, which I...
okay, that's just not right.
I agree. It's like a strawberry margarita or something.
Okay, but you don't do that.
No,
I'm
I
a
agree.
purist.
I am
you don't
too.
make margaritas out of passion fruit and strawberries.
No, straight margarita.
Why mess with perfection?
Agreed.
Why fix what isn't broken?
Agreed.
This
You
is
and I are on
very
the same page
disappointing
here.
to me about Heather.
I know. I'm disappointed in
Out
her
of all
too.
the things you've ever told me about her, this is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever learned about your wife.
I know, and I'm sorry.
Who I
I'm
think
sorry.
is saintly and otherwise.
Yeah, well, of course, she must be to be married to me. All right, so the truth is you didn't actually disengage from anything because you clearly are well read up on it and all. I mean, did you rest? Did you feel restored?
Yes,
Okay.
I did. I slept well, spent a lot of time with Al, with Cha-Cha, who, I thought all dogs love the water because, when you tune in to like a movie and there's a dog, they like jump into a lake following a tennis club. They jump happily into the water and they frolic and they look so happy. That was not Cha-Cha. Cha-Cha is in misery in the water, just trying to get herself out of there alive. Ate food that's very reminiscent of my childhood. These are the beaches of my childhood. Nicaragua is next to Costa Rica. So I grew up in these Pacific Ocean beaches that have a little more action, right, than the Caribbean, where you were. There's more waves. There's more, the sand is a little darker. It's more volcanic. So I can't go to Nicaragua, but Costa Rica is as close as I can get. And it's, it's the same people basically, and the same food, and the fruit in Costa Rica, I can't even explain to you. The mangoes are the size of Chacha, and they are the most delicious. They're called mangas that you could ever imagine. How about you?
I went to the Bahamas again with my kids and visited Baha Mar again, where we did the show a couple of years ago, and had a great time. I was forced by my children to ride some perilous water slides. My 10-year-old rode the Devil's Backbone, which was pretty impressive. And I read a couple books and relaxed and drank a couple drinks and had a really nice time. It was good. It was exactly what I needed.
Yeah, it was nice. But look, I was extremely upset by the news that I was reading. I tuned it out and I did a lot of other things. Because if you're not watching cable news 24 hours a day, it helps, right?
I would imagine.
If you're just, if you're having conversations about other things, and if you're reading books, and if you're listening to music, and if you're listening to the birds in Costa Rica, this place is like a bird watcher's paradise. But I've told you over and over again, this thing that's happening with these immigration crackdowns, it strikes different when you are Latino, because what's happening is racial profiling. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. While I was gone, in my state of Florida, the Florida Highway Police, now Florida law enforcement has been deputized to detain people and act as if they are ICE. And there's been laws passed by DeSantis that make it even easier. And so Florida Highway Patrol detained a man. His name is Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez. It's a 20-year-old man who was born in Cairo, Georgia. So he is a U.S. citizen by birth. And he was in Florida driving to a construction job, got detained, and was detained for 30 hours. A U.S. citizen. And this is not happening in a vacuum. More and more people, because they're speaking Spanish, because I guess they look stereotypically Latino. I guess, if you don't have lily white skin and blue eyes, you are suspect. God forbid you have a tattoo. God forbid you have some melanated skin. Are getting detained because somebody hears them speaking Spanish at a store, or because somebody wonders why they're driving such a car, or because they're working in construction or working in a farm. And sometimes it's been U.S. citizens. There's been Puerto Rican veterans that have been detained on ICE holds, and it's heartbreaking. You've got the case of Andre Jose Hernandez Romero. That's the gay makeup artist, Venezuelan, who they, with no ties to a gang, no criminal record here or there or anywhere, who's been disappeared to El Salvador. There's a delegation of Congress people down there now, and they can't find him. Look, I think the Salvadorian government is simply not putting him forward because they don't want the same issue as with Kilmer Abrego Garcia. But I am sorry, I am not going to let go of this issue, because these are my people. Because I am never going to forget that I fled communism and I fled political violence. And so I don't think I'm better than any of the people that are coming now. And if I had the opportunity in this country, and let me say again and again and again, we all agree, criminals, get them the hell out. Do whatever you want with them. But these people who they wrongly sent, and it wasn't a mistake, it was absolutely purposeful. It was absolutely purposeful, because all they want is to be able to prove Donald Trump's narrative that there's this invasion of Venezuelan gangs overtaking the country. And it's painful. It's painful to see. And it's not just happening to Latinos, right? We're seeing what's happening to international students. We're seeing what's happening to scientists at Harvard, for God's sakes. I mean, if a scientist doing research on frog embryos at Harvard can be detained, what does that leave for other folks? I'm very concerned about what this is going to mean, and it's already meaning for our economy in terms of how it's affecting tourism. I live in a state where there's a ton of Canadian snowbirds that come in the winter. A lot of them are canceling their trips. A lot of Canadians are canceling their trips to Maine this summer. There are European countries that have issued travel advisories for their citizens against coming to the United States. There are people who simply are choosing not to come because they don't want to be sucked into this political drama we are living, because they don't want to be subjected to searches of their social media. And, I will continue to speak out about it every chance I get and on every platform I have, because we cannot get numb to what is happening in this country. And it's only been 3 months.
I also wanted to talk to you about another story that came up while we were away. The Health and Human Services Director, Robert F. Kennedy, made headlines last week for his comments on autism. He vowed to investigate what he called environmental exposures that he claimed could be contributing to the rise of the diagnoses, and went on to say that autism destroys families. This upset a lot of people. What did you think when you heard this?
I have autistic step-grandchild. I have a autistic brother. He said they'll never fall in love. They'll never read a poem. They'll never pay taxes. They'll never work. They'll never drive. First of all, he's woefully uninformed, because there are an enormous amount of people on the autism spectrum that do all of those things.
Of course, it's a spectrum.
I assure you, some of them may be in the cabinet or in the Trump administration or in elected office. It was incredibly hurtful to these families. I saw tweets by my friend Holly Robinson Pete, whose son RJ works for the LA Dodgers. He works. He has a full life. He contributes to his family in making his family happier. He is a full part of that family. And so I just thought it was cruel. Also, how ironic, how actually disgusting that this is a man from the Kennedy family. It was his aunt who started the Special Olympics. I was just with Maria Shriver in Miami. Her brother, Anthony Shriver, showed up. He runs Best Buddies, an organization for people with intellectual disabilities in South Florida. And so much of his family has been known for having compassion and being inclusive and being respectful of people with disabilities. This guy's just, he's an embarrassment to our country. He's an embarrassment to the Kennedys. He's an embarrassment, period. And it's incredibly concerning that this is the man who is in charge of Health and Human Services. Maybe if you're going to be in charge of Health and Human Services, you should have a little humanity to start with. And those comments were simply cruel, inhumane, and wrong. Stupid, just ignorant.
Let's talk about someone you have much more esteem for. We've been discussing the passing of Pope Francis. You've said that although you're a flawed Catholic, is that the term you used? Yeah.
Depending on the day. Some days I'm a sinful Catholic. Some days I'm a wayward Catholic. Some days I'm a flawed Catholic. I can tell you I'm never a perfect Catholic. I think maybe the day I was baptized, and from then on it's been downhill from there.
I think it's tough to find a perfect Catholic. I think everyone's chasing.
But a lot of people pretend to be.
Well, you mentioned
there's a lot of people lying from the podium of the White House wearing big fat crosses. Well,
you mentioned that you had seen the Pope and were overwhelmed by it, and tell me about that.
So I never met the Pope like Whoopi, who had personal interactions with him. But when Pope Francis, shortly after being elected, must have been 2015, came for a U.S. tour. He was in Washington, he was in New York City, and he was in Philadelphia. I asked the then president of CNN, Jeff Zucker, to let me cover it because I was just so moved by this Pope.
Sure.
He meant so much to me. First, I'd been so upset with the Catholic Church over the pedophilia scandals and the way they treat gays, the way they treat women, second-class citizens. It was just upsetting with me. I was like going through a real period where I was, there's no space for me in the church. And one of the things that Francis did was make me feel like there was space and room for wayward, sinful, flawed Catholics who maybe have not followed the rule of the church as faithfully as some others. And so I got to cover him. First, I was invited to the White House lawn by Obama I went with Eva Longoria, who went with her special needs sister. I think she told the story on the show. And I went with Donna Brazil. Donna is one of the most faithful Catholics I know. And she showed up with, I don't know, she must have had 20, 30 pounds of medals and rosaries in every nook and cranny, every pocket, everything, I don't know how she got past the metal detector. And despite the fact that I don't consider myself a devout Catholic, there is something about being around this Pope where you're just overwhelmed by the feeling of faithfulness from all of these people, and there's this goodness that emanated out of him. So I was like a Pope groupie. Mm-hmm. I went and saw him in Washington. Then I came. He did a mass in New York City's Madison Square Garden, and it was. I vividly remember that mass because the homily was about finding God in the big modern cities, right? Finding him in places that we maybe are not looking for him. And I also went to Philadelphia, which was his last stop here, and it was huge. It was like in a street, like in a plaza there, and there was a lot of young people. I've been struck by all the videos of him. He gets called the People's Pope, and there's all these videos of him with children with disabilities, right? Holding the hand of a Down syndrome girl, letting an autistic girl come up on stage and basically run the show. There's all these videos of him laughing and smiling and saying jokes or laughing at jokes. There's all these videos of him with animals, throwing a ball at a dog and just delighting in that. And so, again, it was the humanity of the Pope. And look, I come from Miami, where a lot of Cuban Americans didn't particularly like him. They thought he was too leftist.
Right.
But I think we all are who we are, plus our circumstances, right? And he grew up in an Argentina where there was a right-wing dictatorship, where Perón was in power 2 different times, and there were human rights abuses, and there were executions, and there were all those things. I think the same way I am affected by having grown up and gone through a civil war and fleeing a left-wing dictatorship, you just can't avoid it. It shapes your person. And he's a Jesuit. That's an order in the church that's kind of known for being more liberal. I'm, a Sacred Heart girl, also known for those nuns are known for being more liberals. I was thinking, and I actually also saw John Paul II when he came to Miami and felt the same thing. But I didn't feel it from Benedict at all. And so it doesn't come with the papacy.
Right. It's the person.
It comes with the person. And I think he leaves really big shoes to fill, ugly shoes, because he never agreed to wear those red, like Prada loafers or whatever they are. And I'm now wondering, will the new Pope that gets elected live in the humble abode he was living in, or will they live in the fancy Pope's papal apartments? Will he wear the red Prada loafers, or will he, wear what Bergoglio, what Pope Francis wore? And I can't overemphasize. This was the first time that I heard a Pope speaking Spanish as their native language, and telling jokes in Spanish, and talking about alfajores, which are the Argentine cookies, and churrasco, and the things. There's an enormous hundreds of millions of Spanish-speaking Latin American Catholics, and it was very special that he was the first one in history to be elected Pope. I'm gonna miss him terribly. I also loved how much he cared about the planet, right?
Yeah.
How often he talked about how we have a responsibility to the planet, and I think he did great things. I didn't agree with him on everything, but I don't have to. I don't think I have to agree with people, with elected officials, with presidents, with popes, not even on everything. And certainly he made some very controversial statements in support of inclusion of gays and LGBTQ. And, he met with LGBTQ groups and representatives and let them know that God loved them, that they were children of God, that they were welcome. And he met a lot of resistance from conservative cardinals and conservative bishops who certainly didn't agree and who don't think some of these people, like divorced women or men or women who've had abortions or LGBTQ, are welcome. But that's not what he stood for. So I think he was a great pope. I am going to wake up at 4 a.m. on Saturday, and I'm going to watch the entire funeral. And I think he was terrific. How about you?
My dad's Catholic. I was brought up Lutheran. My mother's Jewish. I'm a hodgepodge of a lot of things. And so I've always I had an outside view of the Catholic Church, and interested in who the Pope was. I went to the Vatican last April, and for the first time, and was blown away by all of it and the history and the majesty of all of it. I have a lot of respect for him and the things he stood for. And I'm fascinated by the whole conclave. I'm fascinated by the process of it.
Have you seen the movie?
I have, yes. And even before that, though, I've had a real interest in the procedure of it all. So I'm going to be watching, very interested through this whole process, definitely. Yeah. And then, Whoopi's friendship with him also has meant a lot to see that. And I already held him in quite a bit of esteem, but that added to it.
Last night, a group of Latinos, we were together. I'll tell you a little bit about that. But I was with Gloria and Emilio Estefan. Gloria, drink alert. Gloria actually sang for John Paul at the Vatican and sang at this New York City Madison Square Garden Mass.
Oh, wow.
And Emilio had a lot of personal interaction with the Pope. In fact, he was telling me a story where the Pope was asking him how Messi was doing, the soccer player who's now playing in Miami. And, Emilio Estefan has like Emilio and I have about the same level of sports knowledge.
Oh, really?
Oh, zero.
Wow.
So he's like, Your Holiness, I got nothing for you. There's nothing I can tell you.
That's pretty good. Speaking of people we drink when you mentioned their names, Eva Longoria on the show yesterday without you. People were shocked by this.
Well, I was actually with Eva on Monday night here in New York because it was the premiere of this show she's doing on CNN called Searching for Spain.
Yes, we promoted it here.
Which is a food show, but it's also a travel show, and it tells the stories. It tells the story of Spain and its provinces, its regions, and its people through food and tradition. It's a beautifully shot movie. My mouth was watering. I went home and I started looking for,
recipes?
Tickets for Spain. And then yesterday, after she was on the show here, we went to I met up with her at the Food Network, and we shot a promo for CNN, and we ate and we drank. And so that was great. And then at night, the Latina posse, we have like the sisterhood of the traveling chachas. We went to support a friend of ours who is starring, who's featured in this Broadway show called Real Women Have Curves. So it was incredibly fun, and it was a big group of us. In fact, I got to meet last night Sofia Vergara, who I've never met. She's gorgeous.
She is.
Talk about well-administrated curves. But she's also hilarious.
Yeah.
My God, did she crack me up.
She's very funny.
And so, I said to her at a point, she said to me, we were talking about what we had done. I said, no, I was just doing a cooking segment with Eva, who was sitting, a seat away. And she goes to me, oh, she cooks for real, doesn't she, Eva? And I go, yeah, she can really cook. I said, how about you? And she said, are you kidding me? With these breasts, you think I'm gonna get close to a fire? But so she's truly hilarious, and I just love the way that we show up for each other.
That's great,
right? And very proud of this show. It's actually the immigrant story. It's inspiring. It's joyful. It's a story about a family, the contributions made to this country, perseverance, hard work. And it means a lot to me. I'm not a Broadway person. I was
going to say, this is like your fourth one recently. It's great.
I feel like I've gone to more Broadway shows in the last month than I have my entire life. Yeah. But it's, representation matters. And you didn't used to see shows that were, where the Latinos were the leads and the central part of the story. And right now there's at least 2 that I know
That's
of
great.
on Broadway, right? Buena Vista Social Club, and now Real Women have Curves. And it's not, these are not plays that are for Latinos. They're about
Right.
Latinos, but they're also, this play is representative of the immigrant experience and hard work and the difficulties and struggles that come from first being an immigrant. In fact, it's set in 1987, and it's very timely to what is happening today. And apparently it's based on a movie I didn't even know existed. For some reason, I missed the movie. It was absolutely wonderful. There was a segment, I hope maybe we can bring them on, but there was a segment, or one of the songs that they did, one of the numbers, they end up, because it's about real women, right? People who look like me without the Spanx. And there was a segment where they like took off their shirts and they ended up like in their undies, right? I mean, these were big undies. Nobody was in a thong, but they were still undies.
Sure.
And I'm thinking to myself, how much would they have had to pay me to take my clothes off and stay in my underwear on a stage in front of people every night?
In front of Sofia Vergara.
Would you?
No.
But you've done stupid stuff.
Yeah, I tend to do stupid stuff.
You've done embarrassing things for money and ratings.
I do, but I put clothes on to be embarrassed. I rarely take them off. No one wants to see that.
No, nobody wants to see that. Yeah, right. I was trying very hard not to stand next to Sofia Vergara and all the group pictures we took, because let me tell you, first, she's like on Amazon.
Yeah.
She's
flawless. Yeah.
No, and she's my age. I'm like, oh, why couldn't you tell me you were like 15 years younger than me? But no, she's it was very fun, and again, I'm grateful to this particular group, because they will travel to support each other, to support
That's
Latinos.
great.
They open doors. They care about mentoring. It's wonderful.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Ana Navarro. We will see you on Friday on The View. Tomorrow, Sarah Haynes will be back with me on the podcast, and we'll see you then.